I go mad, because I can't stop thinking about you. If I go mad, I must be mad about you. I can't stop thinking about you, thinking about you, about you.
HTSE from Titan runs on light.
Yeah, the idea had come from the agency, so my role was to preserve the sanctity of the idea, try and do justice to it. So we had, since it was a sort of a montage film and it had about 6 situations where Aamir is stealing light in various forms and at various times. We had a bank of situations. I think there were about 15 of them, and but the germ of the idea itself was so interesting that I also started brainstorming with them and figuring out some ideas of my own. So eventually we pulled in all the ideas and situations we had, and we decided to go with the best 5 or 6 of them, and depending on client's ability to run the film, I mean, if they could run a longer film, better for us. But we tried to pull in as many situations into the final film. So eventually it kind of got shortlisted about 6 ideas, which everybody was comfortable with, and we felt could fit into the film. And then it was just kind of fine tuning them and trying to find a rhythm and interesting execution for the idea. Well, I came in at much later stage when the client had briefed the agency in terms of their strategic requirements and how they plan to launch the film. So I came in at a stage where the idea had was all kind of confirmed by the client, and the script was pretty much ready. So I came in at a much later stage. So I wasn't really involved in the ideation of the idea itself. But once the idea was done, I was more involved in terms of brainstorming and fine tuning the idea and refining it rather than creating it. I think the idea of stealing light was the primary hook or the idea behind the film, and then it was just looking for interesting situations how you could unveil the film in various different ways. 3-4 things which I was very concerned about, or I think what is important in a montage film is usually that they tend to be somehow disconnected at times, because you just go for pretty pictures or visuals and they really don't appeal, or you don't have an empathy with the film or the character. So for me it was very important that there should be the central character which Aamir is playing, and we had a celebrity, but more than that there should be some kind of a character trait to him which could be identifiable and audience could relate to that character. And finding that character trait was the most important thing for me in terms of holding the film together, the various situations together. Otherwise, they just kind of come and go, and they're episodic, and they really don't hold well together. The second thing I was concentrating on was that in a montage film, you run the danger of boredom or predictability. Once you've established the idea in the first episode or first scene, then subsequent ideas need to be fresh. They need to either surprise you or they need to move it forward. The repetition of the same idea itself becomes boring, and it becomes like the same thing over and again, and so even that is a problem. So the idea was that to have a character who would hold the film together, all the sequences together, and also that there should be a certain rhythm in the film where the film would unfold in an interesting way which keeps surprising, or it's visually different, or in terms of narrative is taking a certain direction and just not repeating the same scene again and again. So those are the things which we worked on, and then we figured out what could be interesting in terms of visually making the film rich, and various fresh situations that could be brought into the film, not the cliche ideas. So we made this bank of situations, and then we kept trashing it around, and we figured out, okay, these 6 are the most interesting situations, and they were very different because in terms of the source from where they come from and how they would flow and how they would be collected. So there was a car headlamp, there was a lamp, there were fireflies, there was under the swimming pool. So basically finding a visual means to make it more interesting and to capture different kinds of stealing light. That was the whole challenge involved. I think it was, for me, it was a very thin line between somebody who was stealing light. So there is an element of stealth, somebody who was sneaking behind corners and doing something. But at the same time, you should be lovable. You should not be villainous. You should not be somebody you don't like. You should be something very nice and endearing about him. And that brings us to the fact that there is somebody who's very passionate about it as well. So there is this very passionate, endearing thief who's running around and stealing light. That probably would be the kind of character I was looking for, Aamir, because he couldn't be a negative character. At the same time, there has to be the element of mystery and something where it's clandestine activity which is going around. And it has to be fun watching him doing that. It can't be flat or boring, or it couldn't be too easy where he could just pour light and walk away, because then there is no drama, there is no mystery. So the idea of stealth was there, and somebody who was also you would like, or you would he would endear himself to you. And while we were chatting, we said maybe he could be an introvert who is so obsessed with his fascination for light that he could be in midst of people, but yet he's so focused on what he has to do, and he's very cheeky, very sly, and he does it in a very lovable way. So that was the kind of character we were kind of trying to get. Yeah, there were two critical areas when we went about doing this ad. One was like we discussed now, the ideation of it, or how to select the scenes we were going to shoot and execute, and what best was the most surprising and fresh in terms of a film. Once we decided on the sequences, it came to the execution of it. I think the biggest challenge was defining or kind of capturing light per se. Because it's not a physical truth. I mean, it's not you don't see it in real life. You don't know how light would flow out. So how would you then show light flowing? So what is it? A liquid? Is it gaseous? Is it just some kind of vapor? Is it smoke? What is the thickness of light? So I think coming to kind of fix on a certain kind of form for the light, where it's semi-liquid and at the same time gaseous, and sometimes it's like vapor. I think finding that was the toughest process, because you need to first understand what you're dealing with, and only then you can go around perfect, getting kind of some kind of physical traits to it. But first and foremost, it was like, what is the form of this light which he's stealing? And this form kept changing in different sequences. So the light which he's pouring from the lamp is completely different from the headlamp, and is completely different when it's underwater, and it's completely different when he's stealing it from a mobile phone. So it is also transforming in every sequence, and I think that was the fun also, because you don't want to see the same thing again in every sequence. So there was back and forth even before we shot the film in trying to determine what is the kind of form this light would take. And so we agreed on a certain kind of liquefied vapor, and varying in thickness and consistency and transparency and various other things. So first determining the form was the important thing. Then we had a very meticulous plan when we shot the film, because we had to take multiple plates, we had to understand reflection, how light would interact with Aamir also, because again, we have not created light, so we don't know how it's going to interact eventually when it's flowing out. So when you pour out the light, let's say from the lamp to the bottle, you're also seeing the light effect on his shirt, on his hands, how it would interact with the bottle. So if it's a glass bottle, when the light goes into the bottle, it would change form again. It will be distorted a bit. It would hit the bottom of the bottle, come up, the amount of smoke there would be. So there's a lot of kind of studying various kinds of light, and we studied liquid nitrogen, we studied running laser through water, we did various tests. So arriving at this form was the most challenging but most exciting and fun bit of it. And once till the very end, even I don't know how it's going to look like, because you keep on experimenting all the time. So what we had sort of an rough idea that it would be kind of a liquid flowing from one source to another. So keeping that in mind, we had a plan on the day of the shoot. So we would shoot multiple plates. We shot Aamir against the real background, made him perform as a normal whatever actor. Then we would take plates without him. We would take plates for the bottle. We, in fact, had wired up an LED light inside the bottle, and which he would be hiding with his hand, and which was on a dimmer, which would glow when the light would come in, so that light would reflect on his hand, and various other mathematical, physical, chemical things which we had to devise for the shoot. So it's a very difficult and slow shoot. It's not an easy shoot where you could get a good performance and move on. There was performance, but there was also this rigor of shooting multiple plates, and then kind of being sure that we've got everything we want. And because it's also celebrity, it's not somebody we can call back again and shoot it again. It's Aamir, and he has 2 days, and we have to get everything right, and also keep shooting the film. So it was a tough shoot in that sense, but it was great fun doing it as well, because it was the first time where we're combining performance and a lot of scientific elements into the same shoot. I think from the time we got the go-ahead from the client to actually shooting it, we had roughly about 2 weeks, and I think we spent at the most about 7 days or a week to kind of figure out or somehow find a space where we would be comfortable in terms of what the light would look like. Eventually, I think things just got clearer as the days went past after the shoot. So we did the post-production of the film in Poland. There's a post house called No Label, and we flew in a post supervisor from there who was there on the shoot, who advised us on different plates and how we should shoot the film and stuff. And between them, we were on the net every night and figuring out, discussing various kind of textures and feel and light. And I think it just kind of, we discovered it as we went along, because it's something which we've never seen before. There was no reference for us to say, okay, it should be like this. It was a bit of that and a bit of this, and something from your imagination, and just back and forth till we actually kind of got it correct when we did it. The whole process took us about a month, and that is again very tight schedule considering the amount of work which went into it. So once we shot it, the post house sent us some samples of what they were doing, and I think they got it about 30 or 40% of what it is eventually in the film. And then it was all kind of finer details which one had to really add to the broad stuff they had done. So I flew down and I was in Krakow. That's where the post house is in Poland. And I think we had some 10 intensive days, every day like working 20 hours trying to get it right, because we had a deadline to meet, and it was really fighting against time. And that's where we actually went in great detail in getting everything right in terms of color, in terms of texture. Simple things like which I'm sure people will not think about is that when you pour light from a lamp into the bottle, if it goes too fast, it looks too light, it looks fake because it looks like water. If it goes too slow, it looks too gaseous, it doesn't still look right. And the thickness of it, what speed would it flow? So when it flows from the lamp, when it tips from the edge of the lamp, it slows down a bit, and because of gravity it starts again picking up speed, and then when it hits the bottle and then through the bottle. So you have to work out various speeds of how the liquid would flow, the color, the reflection it would give, the refraction which would happen. All those small details had to be tried again and again until we got it right. And there was a lot of very detailed work which was happening, and pretty much some 15 technicians on different computers are working day and night to try and getting it right, especially because we had a very, very tough deadline to meet as well, and no reference to go back to and see if we were right. So great fun, but a lot of hard work. Post was the most difficult aspect of or the challenging part of the whole film, because the time which was given to us, also, I think we had a 1 month, which is, I think, generous by Indian standards. I mean, usually Indian clients don't give us the time, so it was great that we got this much time. But even within that, first, you're just like in a dark room, you don't know which direction to go and which path to take, because you're still kind of finding some kind of route to take. And it's only when you do things you realize, oh, this is not the route I want to take, it should be something else. So it's basically a process where you kind of delete all the options you've got till you come at the only option left, and then you progress on that. So that kind of, it's like those blind men with the elephant, you're still figuring out some kind of shape. So figuring out takes a lot of time, and then it was a lot of effort in terms of like little details which are, which people or the audience don't notice, but it just makes it look more real and believable. I was very clear from the beginning that the whole film had to look, or especially the CG animation has to look photoreal. It has to look like it has happened in reality. It cannot look like it's, oh, this is post production, this is CG. You would only guess it's CG because you know it can't happen in real life, but it should look as real as possible and as beautiful as possible. And that takes time, and that takes little details you need to spend time on. And every time you realize that, oh, this is different, then you have to re-render the entire thing, which takes about 20 hours to re-render. So you have to wait for about good 20 hours to see the little change you made, if it's right or not. You just have to wait an entire day or overnight to come back in the morning and say, oh, no, this doesn't work, let's do it again. So a lot of that happened, and we divided the work in different bits and pieces, and with different people handling different aspects of it. So there were people who were doing modeling of it, some people who did the texturing and lighting, and it's just then somehow came together just in time for me to catch my flight back home. Shooting is also difficult because what happens is that you have pure animation films where you just know it's post and you don't concentrate on performance. Here, for me, I was very nervous at the shoot, because I knew that even if the animation does not work, the film should still work in terms of Aamir's performance, his presentation, his his interaction with people. Everything should work well. So there's a great amount of attention which went into his performance to get it very subtle, very real, and try and present him in a way which he's not been presented before in other films. So I had to really work on the performance on one level, and then suddenly switch over to very technical things about post. So switching back and forth is a very annoying and difficult thing on a shoot, because you have to be in a very actor-director mode, and then you have to be in a very technical mode, simultaneously. And that is challenging, and it's also very tiring to do. So yeah, but post, I think, was probably the most critical and most difficult. We've looked at a lot of examples. Like, we've seen a lot of animation films. We did referencing of Lord of the Rings, we did Tron, we did Harry Potter, we did like a lot of inane videos on YouTube which are dealing with light. I think ours is not very similar, because I think a lot of people have used a real liquid and colored it in a certain way. Apparently you can get glow sticks abroad, which are like, they just glow in the dark. And then there are a lot of people told us that you could get certain chemicals which in water under light would start glowing. Eventually we had to find what was working for us in terms of our script and our film, and none of the references actually fitted in well for any of the sequences. There's nothing which, like, from what I could faintly remember, a lot of the Rings, the liquid was slightly bluish and white in color, but it looked very milky, and that was not the kind of thickness I wanted, not the way, speed at which it would flow, and not the glow which we wanted. So in that sense, then it's not a reference anymore, because the only way it helped was that to tell the post house that this is not what I want something else. But what that something else is, we don't know. So that was something which we need to figure out as we progressed along the way. And it's a very abstract concept, so you just keep throwing words, and and those guys are Polish and we are Indians here, and some things get lost in translation. But they were very good and very, very positive bunch of guys who were very patient with me, because I just kept changing and trying to get it better. So I think they're pretty much aligned with us very well on the job, and kind of pulled it off well at the time. After a point, I just got bored with the references because we just kept looking at footage and it kind of confused us even more, because when you have so many options and you know somewhere deep down that none of it is working for your film. And also I was not keen to copy them because though there might be exist something in the world which might be similar to the film, we don't know, but from what this of all the references I saw, there was nothing which really fitted into my concept or how I saw the film. And I thought it also should, if it's there already existing, then we should not try and copy that. We should be different, because that's what would make the film different. And I was very sure that this film had to have at least what is internationally accepted, their standards of what a good post-heavy film would be, or a really good level of animation involved. I didn't want to look tacky or slightly just about there but not there, and so that it had to be perfect. It should be flawless in terms of execution. So we really pushed ourselves to deliver what could be delivered under the circumstances, and I think it turned out really well. I think people have loved it.
There were two aspects to this film in terms of execution. The first was the stealing of light bit, which is largely CG, and you needed to go to the right people and do it in the best possible manner. But for me, that is a function of finding the right people and getting it done. I think the other aspect, which is to bring alive the charm and the warmth that a Titan ad is supposed to communicate, while showing technology, is where I think execution was very, very important. The technology itself, that here is a watch which can be powered by any source of light. So we wanted to show Aamir taking light from different kind of sources, not the normal kind of sources that you would expect a watch to take light from. The second thing is, we also wanted to emphasize the fact that this is an eco-friendly watch, and therefore any light that is already existing, any energy that is already being consumed, can also be used to power a Titan watch. No other form of energy is required. So if you combine these two, you come to the idea of stealing light from different surprising sources. There were two aspects to this film in terms of execution. The first was the stealing of light bit, which is largely CG, and you needed to go to the right people and do it in the best possible manner. But for me, that is a function of finding the right people and getting it done. I think the other aspect, which is to bring alive the charm and the warmth that a Titan ad is supposed to communicate, while showing technology, is where I think execution was very, very important.